Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Pasinex webinar. I'm Wendy Kaufman. I'm the CFO for Pasinex, and I have with me on the line is Steve Williams, who most of you know very well, is the CEO for Pasinex. And beside me here is Evan White, who makes sure I don't have any technical glitches today. Steve mostly will be responding to questions at the end of the call, but I might bring him in for some discussion on the spur development. And that's going to be the focus of the discussion today, which will be on the Spur Zinc project, which is in Nevada. And of course, then I'll be highlighting some of the results from our Q2 that were released. Geez, it's almost a month ago now, but I will do some presentation on that. Spur, in case you're not aware, it was formerly what we called the Gunman deposit, and it's been newly named. And John Barry, who's our VP Exploration, provided the new name, and I can't divulge the secret. Only John can provide that secret to you. So the next time you do see John, I think that would be a great question to ask him. So the first few slides of our presentation are really focused for any of the new callers on the call. And really, I just want to highlight the fact that Pasinex has two active zinc projects on two different continents, one being the Europe-Asia continent and the other being the North America or United States. And so the US is where we have our 80% option agreement for the Spur project. And in Turkey is where we have the Pınargazı mine, which is a 50% joint venture and is currently in production. We also have a lot of exploration potential in the vicinity of the mine, and we continue to explore around the area. And I'll get into that a little bit more in some slides that continue. Pasinex is listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange as well as the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Our market cap is about 15 million today. And this includes an additional 2.2 million shares that were issued earlier in the month in relation to the Spur option agreement. So we're now standing at just over 144 million common shares outstanding. So I think I'll start with on the new information on slide number 6. We released results of our drill program at Spur. We're very pleased with the results, and there's a lot of significant data worthwhile taking a look at in more detail if you haven't already. That was included in our September 11th news release. In summary, though, we verified high-grade zinc oxides, and as an unexpected bonus, we intersected zinc sulfides and black shale close to surface. This opens up possibilities for a much larger zinc mineralizing system. And this is because black shale deposits are typically large and high grade in nature. We're in the process now of preparing our next exploration steps, which will include new drilling, but also a review of older drilling data to try and identify black shale that may not have been previously identified. So that's a very high level summary of the zinc project and the drilling results. And Steve is on the line. And Steve, maybe this is a good opportunity if you want to add some commentary on Spur.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Can you hear me okay there?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, as Wendy said, we were very pleasantly surprised and excited by the results from Spur. When we went into Spur, we went into Spur, thinking that it was starting off as a zinc oxide and probably similar to our geological of our projects in Turkey. And even though those systems have sulfide, when we went into this first drilling program, we weren't expecting to hit sulfides. So when we hit sulfides, which was on our fourth hole, that was a surprise. And, when we've looked at those sulfides, we were even more surprised. And as Wendy referred to, they seem to be hosted massive sulfides, or what we would more commonly call a SEDEX style. And we weren't expecting that at all. Associated with the black shales, we weren't expecting that at all. So it was a very pleasant surprise, not just because of sulfides, but because of the geological. And as Wendy referred to, these types of geology for zinc can grow into much more important zinc deposits. So it's early days, but it was a pleasant surprise, and it's clearly already influencing our thinking in terms of where we're going to go. So we were going into Spur thinking it was a great opportunity, and I think having done this first program now, we think the opportunity is even stronger. So now, Spur is going to get a lot of our attention. You'll see a lot of upcoming, focus on Spur. We want to obviously get back into, first of all, doing this re-logging that Wendy was referring to, and then beyond that, getting back to another drill program. So Spur has become very important for us, and we think it's a great opportunity that we're excited about. There's a couple of questions coming up in the questions relating to Spur, so maybe I'll defer some of the next comments until I answer some of those questions. Back to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Steve. Perhaps if you could stay on for a little bit longer too. So when I flip to the next slide, just have a brief summary of the diamond drill testing that we've commenced at the Akea Zinc project, which is located very closely to the Penargazoo mine. Results are very compelling, and Steve, again, if you could provide some more color, that would be helpful.
Yes, so we started drilling in Akea a few weeks ago. We released that information to the market, so it's in one of our recent press releases. So we are drilling at the moment in Akea. Akea, one first comment about Akea, it's rugged. So getting our drills into Akea into the sides of the mountains was not an easy exercise. It's quite a difficult exercise, but we sort of got there. But it takes some time to sort of get your drills there and get yourself set up and get going. What we've come to realize from Penargazoo, and then really what's driven the exploration in Akea, is that this mineralization is associated with a particular type of limestone, either what we call light grey limestone or what we call marble, which is really a bleached limestone. So it's these bleached type limestones that we're interested in. So one of the first things we did is we did a very detailed mapping program to map where exactly we see the occurrence of the type of geology. And I can tell you that we've identified quite a significant occurrence of that type of geology in Akea, and that's exactly the targets for our drilling right now. So we're drilling on what we think is the most opportunistic type of geology. The other critical issue is the mapping, is the structure, and these types of systems are controlled by the faults, and particularly where you get cross faults. So we've put a lot of effort in also to detailed mapping of the north, south, east, west fault occurrences. This is a mountain range on the edge of a major fault system in Turkey, so it's highly faulted. So we put a lot of effort into identifying where the faults are, identifying where is the occurrence of the right geology, and as I said, that's exactly what we're targeting drilling right now. We've got an initial program of 9 holes, and really we only need to hit with one of those holes, and that will be enough to get us going. Because once you get it, you can then vector on it. You can say, okay, we see it's there and it's going that way, so then you can follow it and with your future drilling. So we're underway. We're into hole 2, hole 3 right at the moment. So we've still got a fair way to go on that program, but we're underway, and we think we've got our fingers crossed, and we're mildly optimistic that this can be very successful, because we think that there's a lot more zinc to be found in these mountains. That's about it, Wendy.
Thank you, Steve. So moving away from exploration, then I'll turn it now to Penargazoo, and this is our operating mine, and we continue to deliver strong production at high profit margins. And what's amazing about this profit margin, so 76% in the first half of 2018, is that as we see the zinc prices starting to come down a little bit over the last month or so, we still can withhold a very strong profit margin. So, which is a great kudos to Penargazoo and the cash flows that can come out of that mine. We received 0.8 million of dividends in the first half of the year, and we still do expect additional dividends through the year. In the meantime, we have had to go to shareholder loans to fund the spur drilling program, as well as some corporate expenses. But this is while we do wait for those dividends from Horzum. Horzum, sorry, being the company that holds the interest in the Penargazoo mine. And I think an important message to also send is that we've recently implemented new procedures whereby now the direct ore sales are being invoiced directly from Horzum rather than through the JV partner. So in September, we did issue a few invoices, and the cash will be coming into Horzum, where we will jointly control that cash and decide on where the cash proceeds will be dispersed. So this is going to give us greater certainty and clarity on the receipt of our dividends going forward. On slide number 9, so here we have our Pasinex financial results for Q2. We had net income of 930,000 in the second quarter, and this compares to 450 in the prior year, so almost a doubling of earnings. And a lot of this, of course, is related to the Horzum mine, the Penargazoo mine and the Horzum company. So on slide 10, there's more detail on Horzum. Our equity earnings are based on 50% of the Horzum net income. And the increase in our equity earnings is totally tied to the increase in the Horzum net income. So this slide shows that Horzum net income on a 100% basis, and the largest reason for this increase in earnings is higher revenues, which stems from higher zinc prices and sales quantities in the second quarter of 2018. Again, of particular interest is the value of the Turkish lira, which has continued to significantly devalue. Horzum revenues are US dollar based and costs are mostly TL based. So this devaluation in fact benefits Horzum earnings, although we are starting to see some of the inflation heading into the Turkish lira costs. But again, the benefit of the seals far outweighs the increase from the inflation. The dividend, however, is subject to foreign exchange exposure, as it is the Turkish lira payable that is owing to us. So as the TL devalues, the Canadian dollar receivable decreases. So dividends in Turkey are declared and determined in the local currency. And this is the way legal works. So we'll always to those foreign exchange movements as we bring the funds back to us, either whether it be in US dollars or Canadian dollars. Turning to slide number 11, this highlights some of the operational data for Horzum. Zinc production and grade are somewhat lower than the prior year, and this reflects some more difficult ground conditions that have been encountered. Costs are very consistent with prior periods, and the US dollar cost per pound, which is typical within the mining industry as a typical KPI, also includes lead byproduct credits, and that's why we see an increase in the 2018 costs as compared to the 2017 costs. And just to remind, of course, all the all the listeners that, this is going to be one of the lowest US dollar cash costs that you're going to see in the industry. So that was just a few of our slides, and that concludes the sort of more formal part of the webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to address the questions, and as usual, bring his own flair of color to the conversation. So Steve, if I could pass it to you on the questions that have been submitted to us.
Thanks, Wendy. Yep. So there were, I think, 8 questions here, and they're of good range. So I'll jump around and pick, question by question. So the first question here is, what do you think are the reasons behind the latest weakening of the zinc price? So that's a big question and a very relevant question. So I thought I'd tackle that one straight on. First of all, what's the big picture? The beginning of this year, February approximately, the zinc price peaked at $1.65 US per pound. I'm sorry for European listeners, I talk in US dollars per pound. Just multiply my number by 2,204 and you'll get it into dollars per metric ton. But we peaked in February at about $1.65. We're now down $1.05, $1.10 US per pound. So it's come off the peak quite a bit. We actually think that there may be a little bit of strengthening again in the price, but only a little bit in the fall, but only a little bit. I think we've probably seen the peak of the zinc price. Before I comment on the reasons, the other thing I would say is that keep in mind, for us as a producing mine, I don't think Wendy mentioned that our costs are down around 20, 30 cents US per pound. So even if the price is $1.05, $1.10, we're still very profitable. What do I think the reasons behind the weakening of the zinc price? It's really simple, and it's the big picture. Stocks are still low. Zinc stocks are still low, but there is new production coming on board. The most significant one recently has been the reopening of the Century mine, which was one of the mines that closed that caused the rush in the zinc price. That has reopened. There's a new company come in, new venture. They're retreating tailings at Century. It's up and in production now, bringing production into the market very soon. And so the market's already, or the market price is already starting to build that into the price that this new production coming on. And I think there's a bit more still to come out, as we look at the next sort of 6 months. So, yet again, we're seeing, price run up, mining industry starting to respond, and production starting to sneak back on. So, as I said, stocks still low. Global stocks in zinc metal are still low, so there is still, I think, some upside yet on the zinc price, although not great, I don't think. I think overall the picture as we go into next year is going to be, I don't know, I'm not strong on forecasting, but I think we've seen the peak, and I think we're into more longer term zinc prices. So I hope that answers that question. The next question, there's a couple of questions along this line. In future, all direct ore sales will be contracted by Horza, which is the operating company in Turkey, rather than sold through Akmetal's trading company. So who wrote that comment, it's quite correct what you wrote there. As a result, cash received from sales will go directly to Horza, where Pasinex has shared control over cash disbursements. Does this mean that future dividends to the partners will be in hard currency, USD or Euro? So first of all, what you wrote there is correct, and that is now taking effect. I've actually just returned from Turkey, and we are into detailed management of the sales of Horza product. We meaning Pasinex. And also together with our Akmetal colleagues into detailed management of the cash disbursement. So yes, as we go through and work on the cash flow, I expect that we'll start to have dividends coming back out again. We've got a few things yet to put in place, but I think we will be seeing those dividends coming back out. As Wendy was referring to, our dividends in Horsemesh are declared in Turkish lira and are actually paid in Turkish lira, but we can then and do then deploy the currency back when we bring it back to Canada in other currencies, hard currencies. The obvious challenge we're facing at the moment is that there's been, as Wendy referred to, a significant devaluation in the Turkish lira against the US dollar and the euro and the Canadian dollar. That's just the way it is. We're winning and losing. We're winning on our contracts in that our contracts are in foreign currency, and then we convert the income into Turkish lira. But we're obviously losing when we deploy dividend back to Canada in hard currency. But yes, we can do all that. And now that we're working intimately on this sales and cash flow, I am confident that as we go forward, we'll see those dividends flowing. Next question. It would be very informative. Same question. If you could quickly touch on the point, if any ore sales contracted by Horsemesh have already taken place and cash received into Horsemesh. It's a corollary of the previous question. And the answer to that question is yes. Horsemesh is now directly selling their product, and yes, those funds are directly flowing into Horsemesh bank account. So we have now bypassed the Akmetal trading company that was being used before. Question 3. Will the Turkish currency issues affect the ability of Pasinex to get money out of Turkey in the form of dividend or otherwise? I don't believe so. There is no reason to think that at the moment. There clearly is the effect of the exchange rate, that's obviously going to the amount of, because the dividends declared in Turkish lira and then converted to a foreign currency. So that's going to have an effect there. But in terms of being able to dividend, no, we don't understand that there's any change. The Turkish government have put in a rule just now that, when you're receiving funds in foreign currency, which we do, we sell in US dollars and euros, you must convert 80% of that cash within, I think, a month to Turkish lira. That's not an issue for us. That's what we've been doing. Our costs are in Turkish lira, so clearly we need to convert into Turkish lira. Okay, question 4. In the company fact sheet, you talk about trying to expand zinc production to 50 million pounds later 2008. I guess really this is a question about exploration in Panagazu. Well, I think you just heard in the presentation that we're now drilling in Akea, and we think Akea is very prospective. We've also, I talked in that slide, commented on the type of geology and the structures that are most conducive to possible zinc mineralization. We've identified other areas, both within Panagazu and Akea, where we think we see that combination of geology and structure. So we have a number of targets. At the moment, we're drilling on one of those, which is the current drilling in Akea. So the 50 million pound was a target. I don't believe we're going to achieve it this year. It was a target, and we'll be a bit less than that. But obviously, we believe that there's still a lot of opportunity to find more zinc in these mountains that we're operating in. and we intend to. We're drilling now in Akia, and we intend to look at some of these other targets over the next year. So it really depends on the exploration. We don't have the right amount of results yet on the exploration to go after that target. But if we have some success with the exploration, then obviously we'll be looking at that target. Okay, question 5. This is a long question. You'll have to bear with me. It's a good question, but it's a long question. So, curious about how Pasinex is or will be addressing environmental issues surrounding its mining activities in Turkey and Nevada, and indigenous issues surrounding land use and environmental concerns. I'm not trying to be unfair to the person, but I'm not sure I'll read all the question just because as Turkey is a productive entity, I imagine there are existing structures in place as well as community agreements. It might be useful to demonstrate how the company is handling this. So the first thing is, it's a good question, and what perhaps we should be doing, and I'll take this on board together with Evan to put a bit more information out there on the webpage as to what we do with regard to environmental and community relations. In the case of Turkey, there's a number of things to say. First of all, this is an underground mine. It's a direct shipping material, so it has a very small environmental footprint and environmental impact. It's just on underground operations and associated surface facilities associated with the underground operation. There is no processing plant. There is no tailings, and that's because it's direct shipping ore. So it's a very, as far as mining goes, almost as benign as mining can get. Of course, we have issues, but they're minor. The community, we're in the mountains. There's small farmers, goats, nuts, things like that around us. And yes, we do work with those people and those community to obviously make sure our community relations are good. An issue that they have is they need water for their agricultural needs, and we have water from the underground. We're also in limestone, which tends to make the water chemically nice and clean, or not clean, but very clean, pretty clean. And so we're able to work with the community on water. And then, of course, beyond that, that's the immediate environment around our operations in Turkey. We're near a large town called Kozan, which is a town of about a bit over 100,000 people, 120,000 people. And we are a significant employer of our employees come from there. So we've got several hundred employees that live and work, or live and interact with the Kozan community. And there, obviously, what's important is that we have relations with the authorities, with the municipality, with the authorities, and we're conscious of that, and we do that. The big point here is that we're a low impact operation in Turkey. Nevada, we're just beginning, and at the moment, we've just done a small drill program. Obviously, we're really quite excited by what we're seeing in Nevada, and we're going to be expecting to do more drilling. So that will require further process in terms of permits and bonds, and yeah, and increase our sort of surface impact, if you like, with drilling. It's a bit early. There is farming in the valleys in Nevada. In the mountains, there's nothing, bush, but no agriculture or community that we're aware of. But there is farming in the valleys. The biggest issue, obviously, in Nevada, I think most of you would probably be aware of, is water. We're conscious of that issue, and certainly, if we're to keep going and ultimately develop a mining issue, we're going to have to come up with a plan of getting water rights, working with again the government and the community on water use and water environmental impact. So water is the big one, which we're conscious of, and which is going to require focus as we go forward in Nevada. But that's sort of where we're at the moment. We're just beginning. But good question, and the real point is that we should put some more information out on the web, so I take that on board. Okay, point number 6. How are you going to explore for the extensions of the Black Shale in Nevada? How does the next drill phase look? And how will you finance? So obviously the Black Shale in Nevada was what's got us excited, and obviously that's what we need to explore for. These tend to be these black shales tend to be flat lying, associated with valleys, and so obviously it's all about it's the same. It's mapping, detailed mapping, detailed vectoring based on the geology, based on the structure and the stratigraphy, and so that's priority number 1. That's detailed mapping to identify where is the black shales, which way does it vector, and that's actually what we'll be doing next. We've started some of that, but that's sort of where we'll go next in terms of our exploration. What's the next phase of the drill program looking like? Again, we're working on that right at the moment. We want to start to explore possible extensions of that black shale opportunity. So we'll want to do a number of drill targets that once we've sort of identified where we think the black shale is going, that start to drill into those black shales. So that will be the next phase of program. I need to say that it's already late September here, and it does snow. We're in the mountains there in Nevada, so we probably are going to miss this winter and be coming back with drilling into the spring, April, May next year. Meantime, though, we've got all this prior work to do to determine the mapping, look for those targets, and get ready for that drill program coming into the spring of next year. How will we finance? We've just been talking about that, actually. I can't say too much at the moment, but the board is looking at, first of all, how much money do we need to spend, and how are we going to finance that? And I would expect that at some point we'll be telling the market about that. Okay, the last question, I think I've done the rest. Yep, one more question. I think it's the same, actually. The possibility of shale-hosted zinc at the Spur deposit is quite interesting. Yes, I agree. When will we see additional diamond drill results for each shales? Okay, so you've actually seen the results of the program that we did, and well, I just finished saying we're now at that phase of saying where do we go next. We're already working on that. We've got some fairly good ideas of what it is we need to do, but we particularly need to do this additional mapping now on the where the black shales are. There are some historical drilling. One of the great things and one of the surprises that about finding this black shale is that the zinc is very subtle, yeah, we were fortunate to have some top zinc geologists that identified it. But we think there's a possibility that some of the historic drilling didn't necessarily see all the signs. And so one of the things we have to do, which we're going to do, is to pull out all the historical drilling and go through it methodically and look for those things that we're particularly interested in now that we know that there's this possibility of black shale mineralization. So that's priority number one, and then coming from that will be the detailed targeting leading into a drill program in the spring. I think that's the questions, Evan. Back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, that concludes the webinar for this quarter, and we look forward to chatting again after we release our Q3 results, which will be towards the end of November. So until then, take care and goodbye.